This is We Need to Talk with Dr. Darcy Sterling, where I give you the tools and skills you need to love better so you can live better. Mental health is no longer a language that only pros speak. Even before the pandemic, but certainly in its wake, mental health has become a common plot line in all media, and in social media, it is overflowing with it. One of the hottest topics is attachment styles, which is a psychological theory that posits that the way we bond to our primary caregivers sets the groundwork for how we'll move through the world for the rest of our lives in relationships. It goes like this. We learn how to love and how to get our needs met through the care that we received by our primary caregivers. The extent to which they fulfilled those needs creates a template that informs us how to act in our closest relationships, and we call that template our attachment style. For simplicity's sake, there is one ideal attachment style and 3 less than ideal attachment styles that we leave childhood with, and we're going to get into all of that later. I studied attachment theory for my dissertation. It was the clinical lens that I used to make sense of my research and my findings. And even though I probably spent, hundreds of hours studying attachment theory, I still find it tricky to explain to people. But today's guest has that completely covered for us. Dr. Diane Poole Heller is an international expert and pioneer in attachment theory. She is the author of The Power of Attachment: How to Create Deep and Lasting Relationships, a book that I make almost every one of my clients read at some point during our work. She is the creator of DARE, a training and certification program for therapists that teaches them how to apply attachment theory into their clinical work. Basically, when it comes to living experts in the field of attachment theory, DPH is the GOAT, and it is such an honor to have her here with me today to talk about all things attachment style. Dr. Diane Poole Heller, thank you so much for being here. So you're a therapist, I'm a therapist. I am always curious to know what draws people to their specialty. So how did you come to specialize in attachment theory?
Well, first I specialized in trauma work. I taught for Dr. Peter Levine his work on somatic experiencing, and I've got, oh my goodness, he calls me the dinosaur. I've been around so long. Probably I was teaching for him about 35 years. And one of the things I just kept seeing over and over again, besides all the really effective ways that helped resolve trauma, it was very, very powerful work, is just this constant sense of broken connection, like people not being able to really get back into a really yummy relationship with themselves or relationships that function. They just seem to crash and burn a little bit. So I got really focused on what is going on with trauma, even when it's mostly resolved, that results in broken connection. And of course, that led me to where does a connection start? If you want to go all the way to the beginning, even in utero, we go to attachment theory, and that gives us sort of our blueprint for a relationship. And then if we have subsequent trauma later on, it often triggers our original blueprint for connection. So, or interferes with it, but it can be repaired. The message is very hopeful in terms of how we can heal our attachment injury if we have one related to how we were brought up or one related from a trauma that happened, however it came about.
So it was sincerely a matter of working with trauma patients, resolving the trauma, and then still seeing that they were not able to show up appropriately in relationships?
Yeah, it just seemed to happen. And of course, I have my own trauma history. So the way I got inspired to do trauma work was a lot largely from my own unresolved trauma history. And as I got into that, I just said, it should not be this hard. There has to be better ways to do it. And so I went on search on, how to help people mitigate unnecessary suffering. Obviously, there's necessary suffering, but there's a lot of unnecessary suffering, and that's what I object to. So that's one of the reasons I think I combine trauma work and attachment work. I just feel like they're a marriage made in heaven. They so complement each other. I wouldn't even know how to work without working with them from both angles at this point. But so I find it really enhanced the effectiveness and the efficiency, really, of working with people. And the main thing was to just reduce suffering. I think it really, really helps that.
Did you have a personal experience that drew you to wanting to cure your own trauma work or your own attachment style?
Yeah, I had a couple things. One of them was I had a head-on collision when I was, let's see, in 1988. That kind of opened up a lot of things because, it was really kind of a big deal to recover from. And then I had a really serious life-threatening surgery. There were different things that kind of yanked on my trauma history from my childhood that kind of opened the door for all that. And I pretty much had it compartmentalized and dissociated from. I pretty much had it in a box,
As we're wont to do as therapists, like we're really good at compartmentalizing and powering through, and then a life event in adulthood hits us and it reverberates backwards.
Yeah, I think that happens for all human beings, but I think the research actually says that our profession calls us, and there's a high statistic of some unresolved disorganized attachment in our histories. And when I ask that question, when I'm doing, trainings with people, a very high percentage of people raise their hands. Yeah, I've got some of that. Now some people don't, which is great. It's not like I want people to have it. It's just that often the reason we get into our profession is partly from our deep commitment to ourselves to heal, but also then the curiosity of how do human beings heal from really difficult things. And then we become sort of good at it eventually, or we were co-opted into it with our parents where we overfunctioned for, unresolved traumatized parents. We became cheerleader or the support system or the holder of the emotions or whatever, trying to regulate parents that were, having a hard time. And it's kind of like early university. We got trained from very early on.
We did. Yeah. Yeah. No, it is. That's the boot camp for so many people when they find themselves in that role of the family. So I am terrible at explaining attachment styles. Would you mind giving a rundown of the different attachment styles that we leave childhood with and how those manifest in the traits that we display in our adult relationships?
First of all, if we were lucky enough to land in a pro-social family where we would call it secure attachment as a young one, and then it's called autonomous attachment as an adult, where we have kind of family members that are relationship oriented. They like to play together. They create a safe environment to the extent they can, sort of a safe haven. People are celebrated. People are seen in the family. There's a safe, affectionate touch. There's sort of an empathetic other there if things go wrong, right? Something's not okay at school or even earlier on, when you're really a toddler, something's upsetting. There's an empathetic other there. There's a person that's, oh, come here, honey, let me, I see you're sad. Let's talk about it. Or I get your brother broke your toy or, whatever it is. There's somebody there that's aligning with what's going on for the child in a reasonably resonant and accurate way. And then if something, there's misattunement, they're good at repair. And I always ask that question in workshops too. Like, how many of you had good modeling for parents that apologized or to each other or to you, or when things went off, they kind of acknowledged it. And sadly, very few people had that in our upbringing. But we can learn that. The cool thing about if we didn't start with secure attachment, we can learn to have the capacities of secure attachment. And if you know what they are, it's easier to learn them. That's one thing. People think they should just automatically know all this stuff. Well, I certainly didn't. And
no, nor did I.
As soon as I explain it, I think everybody listening, most everybody will go, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's biologically ingrained in us to have secure attachment. So my way of thinking about it, this is a little bit of a Dianeism, which just means it's my opinion. But John Bowlby actually says this, that it's biologically innate that we can feel and recognize and reorient to secure attachment. Now, things happen. Our parents have unresolved trauma for their own past. The human race is, has challenges, right? We're all in this mess together in a sense. But, a lot of times people come into parenthood with unresolved issues. It's just, they're doing the best they can usually. But then that often passes down attachment injury to kids. So we're kind of looking at how do we help parents? How do we help people in partnerships, whether they're married or they're living together or they're friends or they're coworkers even? How do we help people reorient to secure attachment? And first of all, know what it is. So I want to say a little bit about more what it is. Playfulness is big. We need to play more, especially in the United States. Play. I'm giving everybody a lot of permission. Go out and play a lot.
Does ball busting count as playfulness as long as both people are in on the joke?
I don't
like
know. That's
teasing each
interesting. As
other.
long as it's not contemptuous, any kind of contempt sneaking in is a relationship killer. So you want to be careful, even in jest,
For
how you're
sure, for sure. But
communicating.
I jokingly say that one of my love languages is like if you can tease me and I can tease you
Oh,
back, I
definitely.
immediately feel secure with you. To
Yeah.
me, that speaks volumes, and that is when I really feel secure with someone. But I
Well,
could also have some wires crossed.
well,
We'll
you're
examine
right.
that.
No, you're right. Because having a sense of humor and being able to laugh together, being able to play, being able to banter, all of that is a hallmark of secure attachment. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
Even how you use your voice, like hopefully my voice is not like flat affect like a robot. It's melodic. That is also signals safety, signals secure attachment. So even how we use our eye gaze, where I'm able to make
yeah,
contact, um, I'm able to have a beam gleam, like send kind of a you're special to me look through my eyes to someone that I care about, or just to a human being, just an appreciation of, some stranger walking down the street. I can send that energy. And people should practice that. It's amazing what happens when you send just an intention of good energy, kind of a namaste sort of energy to other people, even if you don't know them. It just brightens people's day. I mean, even if you're just checking out your groceries or buying books at the bookstore.
it sure does. No, people appreciate it because it's so rare.
Yeah, and it's a skill. I have a couple different ways that I try to polish my own secure attachment capacities because I didn't grow up in a securely attached family, so I have to learn it myself. But I tend to spend about 30 minutes in the morning, 15, 30 minutes just texting people, keeping in touch, just sending good vibes out to friends or, anybody I know that's having a hard time. And I used to have to rewrite my emails because my emails were so factual, like, okay, be here at 3 o'clock, or whatever. And so I had to like write down what I wanted to communicate, but then I have to go back and make them friendly. Like, hey, how's it going?
Yeah,
You're having a good
I've
week.
been
Yeah.
that is a note to self with I have a tendency to text, I'm told, like a dude. It's very factual, it's very short, and I then will go back when I have time, if it's not urgent, and I'll soften it. I'll become a human so that it's not like a bot sending the text. It's a human being.
Exactly. But these simple things can make a really big difference. I have a really good friend of mine. Everybody would know it if I said his name. He's well known in the field, but he used to always send me these texts, and at the end he'd put the colon and the parentheses so it would look like a smile. Every time he wrote me, and then he did stop doing it, and I thought, and I it's really funny. I had this really strong reaction, like, well, did I offend him? Did something go wrong? Why am I not getting the little smile at the end of these emails? I mean, I'm really putting myself through a thing about it a little bit. That's how sensitive our attachment system can be. And then about 2 weeks later, he writes, oh, I got a new phone. I went from, I don't know, iPhone to Android or whatever, and I don't know how to do the thing. It's not working. And I went, oh, gosh, it wasn't about me. I was
And
really laughing at myself. I'm like, God, you really take things seriously.
that should be tattooed on 3/4 of the population. Oh gosh, it's really not about me. That
Exactly.
could solve so many of life's problems.
Exactly. My friend had a dream, which I quote her on. Pat Love. She's also been on Oprah 7 times with relationship work. She's amazing. But she had a dream with like, those airplanes that have a sign that go behind them, it said, don't take things personally. And what I love when people understand attachment theory and then how to put it in practice is they realize that I'd say most of what's going on in their adult relationship has nothing to do with their adult relationship. So much of it is imported from history. But I love that about it because when you don't take things so personally, you realize, oh, this is probably coming from a wound and the person has this knee-jerk reaction and you come at it with compassion and understanding. But let me get back to your original question. So secure attachment is you feel seen, you feel like heard, your emotions are okay. It's okay to ask for needs. You don't feel scared to ask for needs. You feel like they're not going to get everything you want all the time, but but people have the intention of trying to show up for you and trying to meet your needs the best they can. There's a lot of play, a lot of laughter, a lot of humor, repair if things go off. So this is what we're trying to get to if
Mhm.
we didn't learn that originally. And there's a lot of skills that you can learn. We call them SAS, secure attachment skills. Um, Things like when your partner comes home from work and you're at home first or something, or vice versa, that you stop what you're doing, unless it's an emergency,
Mhm.
turn off the stove, you let the kids handle their own homework, or you let the dog hang out. You just stop and you meet your partner and you have a full, if it's a, relationship kind of thing, this has to be appropriate to the relationship. You have a full body hug. You don't do this pyramid one that sometimes we're famous for. We just pat somebody on
Right.
something. And then you really stay in that embrace until you're regulating each other. So you can feel your body regulating your partner's body and your partner's body regulating your body. And Stan Tatkin has a lovely YouTube on that called Welcome Home Hug. So I'm going to put a shout out to that for people to watch it. And you just hang in that embrace till you really feel your body just kind of relaxing and regulating with the other person's body. Bodies want to be with other people that regulate them.
And the pandemic showed us this.
Yeah, that was really hard. That was really hard. Anyway, here's why I'd like everybody to think about this. Think about it like you have secure attachment. It's in there biologically. It's just that stuff gets dumped on top of it, or wounds happen interrupted, but it's there trying to come up, even though it might be hitting some wounds and some difficulties. But I want us to just to have this kind of hopeful message that we have it inside us. We recognize it when and someone's relating to us that way, and that we can emphasize those capacities, even if we have to plow through some wounding or some pain on the way.
If we don't hit the childhood lottery and come out with a secure attachment style,
right,
what are the other options?
So one way an attachment wound, I'm going to call it avoidant. And you're right. You mentioned this to me earlier that people use different language. And I guess it's just everybody wants to put their mark on the theory, but I just tried to take the language that's most used so that I'm not creating even yet more definitions to try to work with.
And the character trait that we associate most clearly with that attachment adaptation is one of avoidance. It's not to say that people don't want to be in relationship, they're having an internal conflict.
Right. You're mentioning one of my pet peeves because there are authors out there that say, don't get in a relationship with an avoidant person. They don't want a relationship, and I don't agree with that at all. So
I don't either. Maybe because I'm indoctrinated with your book. I've taken so many people through it. So I reread it multiple times a year with many different clients every single year. So it's possible that I'm indoctrinated a bit, but I'm with you. Carry on.
Well, you probably know my book better than I do at this point.
I think I probably do.
But anyway, with avoidant attachment, that usually sets up one of three ways. And you can have a little bit of it, or you can have one or two of the characteristics of it, or you can have a really big default mechanism that takes you to deep avoidance. So there's different levels of these things. And I want to say before I go any further, you easily, most people I think do have a mix of attachment styles because maybe you related to your mother one way and she related to you a particular way that pushed you in a certain direction, and maybe your dad was different, or maybe you had step parents in the mix, or grandparents or siblings. So all these things pull on our attachment system in a different way. I don't want to forget to tell people this because we do have a free attachment quiz on our website. You can just go to traumasolutions.com or dianepooleheller.com. They go to the same place. And that way you get a little bit of a feeling for what your attachment style. But avoidant happens when a parent is just sort of vacant, dissociated. They're just not there. Like the little infant is looking out and trying to find the eyes of their parent, and they get this terrifying experience of nobody's there. Nobody's
so sad.
Yeah, and that's really frightening for infants because they're 100% dependent on their parents. So when they need somebody to actually show up, to have a smile, have warm eyes, have comforting arms and hands and warm bodies and all of that. And so one way is just the parent probably has some unresolved traumas, why they're so dissociated, but they aren't able to show up. They don't have emotional nuance. They aren't able to really recognize or encourage or be with the child's emotional states. So very often there isn't much emotional nuance later because there was never this safe place to have emotion, almost like emotions became disowned, or certain emotions became disowned. But emotional sense of things, it's really a right brain function. They weren't related to right brain, which is really what we need for healthy attachment. So
and when you say dissociated, I don't think you literally mean that they had to, of all those parents of people who have the avoidant adaptation, it doesn't mean that all of those parents were dissociated, correct?
No, they don't. No, there's three ways. I just got to the first one is just that the parent isn't able to be present
I
and
see.
enough of the time for the child to feel like they can really show up because it's the attachment involves more than yourself, so if the other person isn't there or isn't responding to your needs or isn't getting aligned with your emotional states and you don't feel there's a resonance, that's very frightening to a little one. So
Hmm.
they kind of feel like they're on their own, but they can't be on their own, right? So
Right.
because they're too little, they aren't able to be on their own. Another way it happens is when a parent is actively rejecting. They just look at the child with anger or hatred. They are actively rejecting. That's very painful, and that's another way a child will revert to an avoidance stance where, okay, it's just better if I'm not in this relationship. I'm just going to take my space. I'm
Huh.
better off by myself. This is really, really painful. They don't experience the relational field between their parent and themselves as nourishing, at least not nearly enough of the time. So there's this neglect and sometimes active rejection. And then
Mm.
third way it shows up, which is a little bit more recently understood, more recent research, is that sometimes parents showed up, but they only showed up in left brain activities like how to teach you how to read or how to teach you how to write or how to teach you to ride your bike or how to teach you how to build sandcastles or whenever it was like a learning of a skill
Yeah.
showed up and was actually engaged. But whenever it was emotional or there was a need for comforting or that sort of thing, they weren't available enough. And that's another way a child will revert to an avoidance stance. And what that basically means is their sense of self is largely felt as isolated and they tend to regulate, but they tend to self-regulate. It's not really self-regulation. It's kind of a dissociative regulation. Like when you trance out to Netflix too much at night, it's
Yeah.
regulating, but you're kind of like spaced out, right? Or they just get lost in video games, or later they might just do porn and they don't really do, one-on-one body-to-body relationship as much. There's a less commitment or harder to maintain a relationship with a partner, perhaps, or that they could because they need they have a knee-jerk reaction to withdraw, and they have a stress on connection. So connection is stressful. Now, if you
Huh.
understand that as an adult partner, you can support somebody. Like it takes a long time for an avoidant to go from deep isolation to connection. And if you're a connection person, you do it in 2 seconds, right? You're like, oh, I'm here. Let's go. But if you're an avoidant, you need time. It's like scuba diving. You need time to kind of like come up, or else you get to the emotional bends. So if
Yeah.
your partner understands that, they could say something like, oh, honey, I want to take you out to your favorite restaurant tonight. How much time do you need to surface from what you're doing on the computer right now?
How much time do you need to service? That's such a great question. How
Yeah.
much time do you need to be? Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
great way of doing it.
And they might say, oh, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is. You go, okay, I'll check back with you in 20 minutes. And then, I'll take you out. But if you just say, come on, let's go, that's very hard for them. Then you might take it personally because their reaction will be, wait a minute, I'm in the middle of something. What do you mean? You're interrupting me. They might be kind of abrupt, right? But that's because they are having trouble. They can't surface as fast
They
as
don't transition from activity to activity as quickly as other people.
it's not activity. It's from isolation to connection.
Ah,
They don't surface from there. It's a very deep withdrawal. And that's how they
mm,
survive. They nurture themselves by being alone, but it doesn't mean they want to be alone. They want to be connected, although it's usually their desire for connection is a little bit disconnected from. So in
mm-hmm.
therapy, when an avoidant starts to feel the longing to connect, it'll have a lot of pain with it. It'll be really sad and painful. And I always say, hey, that's your secure attachment poking out. That's really good. I know it's uncomfortable, but that's your secure attachment surfacing that you want to belong, that you want to connect, that you want to be with someone that you care about and you want them to care about you. And they go, yeah, but it's so painful. I go, I know it's painful because when it originally was there, it kind of got tromped on. But we just
Mm,
get through the damaging part, the part that got damaged, it got hurt so much when you were younger, and that this is actually a very healthy, very wonderful desire. So, it's kind of reframing because they'll feel like they're doing something wrong. That pain is so hard that they'll feel like I should never try to connect. This is bad for me, and it's
I
not.
imagine it would be similar to if we didn't understand how muscles get developed and we just went to the gym and worked out. For the next 2 days, we'd be like, I can never do that again. I was in so much pain the last time I went to the gym, but now we understand that it's going to be painful and we rebuild stronger.
Exactly. That's a great metaphor, actually. It's the same thing with our attachment system, very much like that. And see, the thing is, if we understand it, or we understand our partner, we understand other people's attachment style, we understand our own, we can enter into it with much more compassion and much, like when I said to him, or whoever it is, when they start to feel the need for belonging, this is great. We need to celebrate. It's so painful. I know it was because of what originally happened wasn't the right thing. It wasn't the best situation. But right now, actually allowing that longing to connect can bring you into a world that's double the size you've got now. You'll have yourself and you'll have all these other people. So it's kind of the reframing is really important, and also that you understand what the challenge is, that you're not judging someone because they need to react. One of the things that happens for the avoidant is when they let themselves, they'll like have this really intimate evening with someone, maybe they're dating or their partner or whatever, or a friend, it could be a conversation, could be, sexual encounter, could be whatever. They get really open and they get really deep into intimacy and it feels really good. And then they go home and it's like, oh my God, all the demons come out of the closet and they end up ghosting the person. And the
Right.
person who's being ghosted is like, what? We just had this incredible connection. I've been waiting for this forever. It was wonderful. I just loved it. Yum, yum, yum. And then they don't hear from the person for like 2 weeks. If you don't understand that the person is probably going into their avoidant reaction because that intimacy like really freaked them out, you would take that very personally.
Is it fair to call that a vulnerability hangover?
Could be. Yeah, I think that's
or a connection hangover. Maybe we should coin a new term. It's a connection hangover.
It could be. Yeah, definitely.
That can be because it can be too much for some people.
Yeah. But if you write a text to somebody that's ghosting you and say, I know we had this amazing evening and I know you might need to take some space, just connect with me when you feel like it's the right time. That understanding alone is so unusual for the avoidant from their history that they
And
feel,
that's not
wow,
enabling. That doesn't enable.
No. That's not in my opinion. I think that that's helping them understand that you're still there, which they don't usually experience because their parent wasn't there consistently. It's also that you get that they need space and you're saying that's okay. That's a really attachment attuned response, in my opinion.
Nice.
And
Okay, I
usually
appreciate that.
surface faster if they feel understood. And feeling understood, you have to understand, is new territory for the avoidant because their whole conclusion, and this is not just cognitive, it's emotional, it's physical, it's in their nervous system, their brain, their muscles, their bones. And it's also linked to survival because the way they survived childhood was to try to do everything themselves, to teach themselves to read, to teach themselves to ride a bike, to teach themselves, how to do school, to teach them. They just tried to do everything alone because anytime they tried to involve their parent, they had to pay a big price to pay. So they're overcoming that very strong, even pre-conscious implicit memory conditioning. And so for them to for you to say to them, I'm here to support you. I know that's a little unusual, but I actually am here to support you. Or if you do want to tell me what one of your needs is, I'll try my best to be available. That's foreign. That's like foreign language that they don't get that, so they have to learn it gradually. And as they start to feel and experience that relationships are nourishing, they're on their way back to secure attachment. That's the recovery back to secure attachment.
I didn't understand that. I really thought of it in practicing therapist 28 years, but the underscore practicing therapist. So I'm still learning, as I hope everyone is. I always thought of it as binary, in other words, I understand that that people's attachment styles land on a spectrum, but I also thought that kind of, hey, I know that we had a great night last night. You might need a minute. Come back when you're ready. I always thought of that as enabling. Like, are you not rewarding that behavioral pattern? And if it's not what you want, which most people do not want that indefinitely in their relationship, are you not setting the groundwork for giving that person permission to be like that indefinitely?
Well, the way I would look at it slightly differently is that as you understand someone, you have to understand for the avoidant to be understood as brand new territory. Like they don't see relationships like that anybody's going to understand them. So if you communicate your understanding and your acceptance, they're much more likely to experience the relationship as nourishing. And as they experience the relationship as nourishing, they're moving to secure attachment, which means they
Of
don't have to
course.
withdraw so much. So
Yeah.
it's what we have to look at is attachment injury is not permanent. But we have to find creative ways to move people towards secure attachment, and they have to want to, right? And if I was talking to the avoidant, like, well, what does that person, male or female, what does the avoidant need to do to heal? I would say, well, next time you want to do an activity that you usually do by yourself, pick an activity that you can do with someone else and see what it's like to share it. Like, you could watch TV just like this, you're just watching by yourself, or you could take breaks, now if you're streaming something and hit pause and talk to your partner about, wow, what just happened in that, in that scene? What did you think? You can dialogue, you can communicate. So you give people doable practices. Like, for instance, for the avoidant, a really great practice is approach because they don't approach. They're like, leave me alone, a lot. So you can just say, well, the grocery store, just ask somebody, how do you pick the best cantaloupe? Or you just start a conversation. This is a big deal for some people. I said, just
Yeah.
do this once a day, or if you're up for it, do it 3 times a day. Just see, or reach out to somebody, text them and say, hey, just wondered how you're doing. This is new behavior, and then see what kind of response you get. And if you like the response, so they have to experiment with moving from isolated focus to shared experience. And that's uncomfortable for them. But if they practice it, they might actually find out they enjoy it because we have pro-social brains. We are designed to regulate through connection. And an avoidant is missing all of that. Plus, I think I want to say that it's very stressful, even though they don't look stressed. If you measured them physiologically, they are stressed. But because
Mm,
you have to be shutting down your entire attachment system, which is a little bit, attachment is kind of like an instinct. I mean, it'd be like shutting down thirst or shutting down hunger. It takes a lot of life force to shut down the attachment system. So when they get relief from doing that and they feel safe enough to not do that, that's really helpful. And you can ask an avoidant because you have to get their buy-in. If they come in for couples counseling, they're usually drug in by their partner. They're usually thinking, I don't have any problems. They have all the
it's
problems.
so
I'm
true.
fine. I don't need any of their support. I'm good. I'm okay. I'm by myself. Leave me alone. So you have to learn as a therapist how to get buy-in. And one of the ways is really goes back to the adult attachment inventory, where you ask them questions like, when you were hurt, when you were little, emotionally, who did you run to? And they might, no, I don't know, because they don't tend to think about the past, like really digging into it. But no, I don't know. I guess I ran to my mom. Well, how did she react? What did she do when you were hurt at school or whatever? And they'll say, well, oh, I'm sure she hugged me. I don't know. Well, what do you have an actual memory of what your mom did? Well, my mom used to do a lot of charity work at church, and she helped a lot of the neighbors, and she would bake casseroles if somebody passed away. And they're talking about all this stuff. Yeah, 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 that's great. But what did she do for you?
Mm,
You were emotionally or physically hurt. And then when they can't come up with the memory, because often it's not there, they can't come up with the memory, they start to go, maybe something was missing. But they will tend to not go there on their own. So you can ask these questions, different questions about, if there was a bully at school and they were beating you up, where did you get support? But you have to make sure you ask them for a very specific memory, because very often they'll divert into
right.
mom was loving and everybody loved her at church, but that doesn't have anything to do with what their relationship with her personally. So when you get to that, you start to trigger some relevant experience or lack of experience that opens up curiosity for the avoidant, but they often don't go there. Some clients come in and go, I have this issue. I have a hard time making contact with people. I notice that I tend to reject people. They don't usually come in with that kind of opening sentence. You
Hmm.
sort of have to find it in the implicit memory. And that's what's a little more challenging for therapists until they really understand attachment theory.
Most of our listeners are people in relationships,
Yeah.
looking to understand themselves and their partners or their future partners better, um, which is just something to keep in mind as you because although we do get therapists listening to the podcast, the vast majority of people are lay people who are just really interested in personal development and wanting to improve their own relationships. Um, So I think it's really helpful that suggestion that you offered a few minutes ago regarding, asking someone how much time you think you need to surface.
Hmm.
That seems, I think they're probably used to being characterized in a pathological or a negative way
Yeah. Yeah.
around their attachment and connection tendencies.
And that's what I'd really like to mitigate if we can, because I think labeling, especially in a non-compassionate way, isn't going to promote healing and isn't going to promote connection, right? But the nice thing is, if, like, for instance, if I realize, okay, I mean, I think I have a little bit of all of them, so that helps me because I understand them all from the inside. But if I'm in my avoidance space, it's also, if somebody just says, okay, take the space you need, that's a relief. There's like a separation elation that can happen. But then, of course, I'm going to want connection eventually. So, uh, but if somebody communicates, they understand that and they aren't giving me a hard time about it, that's helpful. And then I also feel like it's my responsibility if my avoidant is up that I need to overcome it at some point and reach out. And that's what the avoidant needs to learn, is that it's okay to reach out, and how to reach out and how to initiate connection in a way that's probably going to be most satisfying.
So we've got the secure attachment
And the
locked. I think
avoidant.
now we have the avoidant.
Ambivalent is what I'm going to call it. People call it different things, sometimes anxious. But what I like about ambivalent is it really says again what it is, because a person with ambivalent attachment, they actually had some good parenting, right? And the avoidant, if you're true avoidant, you've had kind of a disaster in terms of relationship as a kid, because your parents were not attuned. They were either angry and sometimes even abusive. The ambivalent is different because they had on again, off again parent. They had some really good parenting. They had really good sense of being loved. They had some really good connection with mom or dad or both. But it's on again, off again. So the biggest problem for the ambivalent is the inconsistency.
Yes.
Because it's like gambling in Las Vegas. You don't know, putting all your quarters in, you don't know if most of the time you don't get what you want. And then all of a sudden you get a bunch of quarters, so there's this anxiety that comes from just never knowing, is my need going to be met? I mean, now it's met, but what about tomorrow? Because I know it wasn't met now. That's really lovely, but I don't know if it's ever going to be met again in the future. So there's all this uncertainty and anxiety and inconsistent responsiveness. Like for the avoidant, it's consistent non-responsiveness. They pretty much know there's not going to be a response. So forget it. Why even go there? But for the ambivalent, they're jacked up on their attachment system. They're like their attachment system's on steroids, trying to figure out, will the other person love me if I do this, or if I that, or if I look like this, or if I smile, or if they're constantly trying to figure out, how do I get people to like me, and also in a stabilizing way, like a consistent way. And that is very emotionally bankrupting, for one thing. They tend to overgive. They take everything personally. The avoidant is focused on the future. They say, forget the past. Who cares about the past? The ambivalence, the opposite. It's like they remember every hurt from every moment and every relationship. It's like very hard to recover from wounding. They read attachment signals like super sensitively, but the problem is, that's really great. They read them because the avoidant doesn't see them. They read them, but they read them with a negative bias. They read them with a strong tilt towards, I'm being rejected.
Right.
And they're
What are the
not.
ways in which
When
you're
they're
going to
not.
reject me? Yeah, they're reading a room to see who's going to reject them.
And they actually believe they're being rejected before they're even rejected. I mean,
It's true.
they're angry about it before it even happens. I know you're going to let me down. I just don't know how you're going to do it yet. So it's like
Yep.
you kind of set up to fail as a partner a little bit. So understanding that is also, of course, very important. So if you're a partner to someone who's struggling with healing ambivalent attachment, reassurance is really good. Like, you're my guy, you're my gal. I really want my time with you. I carry you in my heart when I'm on my business trips. You text them, you stay connected, because as soon as there's no connection, they immediately go to negative. This person doesn't care about me. This person isn't thinking of me. This person, isn't reliable. I hate them, and
Right. They don't
even
ascribe to the belief that no news is good news. They think no news is a step towards abandonment.
definitely no news is bad, 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 bad.
Yeah.
Abandonment is on its way. So there was a classic example in Amir Levine and Rachel Heller's book called Attached, where he said that they had this couple, and they were newly married and they really loved each other. And he had some, I can't remember exactly, it's some really demanding job, like a surgeon or a prosecuting attorney, something like that. And she was a stay-at-home mom at the beginning, and they really cared about each other. But he'd go off to work, and in the beginning, she's texting him, and he's texting back, and that. But eventually, he's like either in surgery or at court or whatever, and he couldn't really respond. And by the time he got home at whatever time, it's 6 o'clock at night, she was furious with him because she was
They
sure
were already in a fight.
Yeah, they were in a fight because she was having it. She was having the fight before he even was involved, and he did really love her. He said, and so they finally got to counseling, and he said, "I do love her. I absolutely adore her, but I can't always respond because I'm in the middle of all these demanding things." And so they worked out this unbelievably simple solution. They crafted a text message together, like I don't know what it was, something like "I love you. You're in my heart. I care about you. I can't wait to see you." Whatever it was, they wrote it together. And then she said, "I don't need him to write me a different text message. I just need him to hit send on the same text message whenever he's thinking about me." So all he had to do was hit send, again on the text message. And that solved the whole thing. I mean, she was like, "Okay, he's thinking about me. We're good. I'm good." She just needed that reassurance. Now, as she gets more secure in the relationship and they both move more towards secure attachment, she won't need as much reassurance. But in the beginning, it's really important.
Right. And what I love about that example is that you got the partner in that example to tell the other partner what she needed, because not all words are going to resonate with everyone.
Right. So, there are, one of the things that we teach in our courses is the zillions of ways that, first of all, you move from attachment injury to secure attachment, so that, it doesn't mean you then can just ignore the relationship. You're practicing secure capacities. You're, making sure you have good comings and goings in your relationship. Like I have friends that, I love this story. They told me this, and I think it's such a cool thing. They both love chocolate truffles, these really expensive, interesting versions of truffles. And so every night they buy each other special truffles, and at night, like one goes to bed really late and one goes to bed early. So they have this truffle meeting, like I guess 9 o'clock or something, and they debrief the day. They clean up any messes that might have happened in their relationship or anything that's left hanging for the day. They enjoy their truffles together. And then she goes to sleep, and then he goes off and does whatever he does for another couple hours, way into the night on researching stuff on the internet or whatever he's doing. And that's how they do their, because you're separating into sleep, right? But
right.
They have this really wonderful chocolate way of separating into sleep.
They have a ritual.
They have a ritual. And so I just always give people the challenge to create, it doesn't have to be that ritual, but a ritual for comings and goings. And like they cook breakfast in the morning together. So that instead of being on their, just like this, on their phone, they're actually cooking a really healthy breakfast, and they enjoy their breakfast together. They're face to face for the breakfast. They're not locked into their phone or their devices. I mean, we have this devices thing now, which is helpful. That's why you and I can talk right now. But it also can be divisive, if you're using your devices instead of face-to-face contact or, really being with somebody. They say even if you turn the cell phone off and you put it face down on the dining room table, it reduces intimacy by 35%.
Just having it on the dining room table while you're eating the meal?
Having it visible. But like have a basket in your house or something where you park your phone. Doesn't mean you're going to check your phone once in a while, right? But just have it not be dominant in your space. So there's more I could say about ambivalent is that, remember, these attachment injuries happen so early. They're really wired into how do we survive. They're part of our relational template that we project on all of our relationships afterwards until we heal the injuries. So really important to do the healing work if you're pulled to it. It has so many gifts and rewards from getting to the other side of this. And a lot of us have to learn secure attachment because we weren't raised with it. I mean, that's very common. You're not alone on that one, but you can recover into secure attachment, and maybe not 100%, but pretty close. I mean, if you really practice secure attachment skills, it will help you so much to have a more fulfilling life the rest of your life. It's worth it, I think. So when we go into disorganized, well, there's one thing I wanted to say about ambivalent first, because of the survival part of it. When we were really, really little, before you even have a mind or an ego structure to tell you stories about this, we signal what we need through crying, right? I mean, all babies do that, except that the avoidant will just go into resignation, not even cry because they give up. They just like this work and forget it, which is a very sad thing. I mean, there's
so sad.
So
I got to tell you,
really.
Menopause has just made my empathy 10x. And I'm like, thank God I didn't feel this way my whole career because I feel so much all the time. And I'm like, these attachment styles are so fucking sad. They're
Yeah,
just so sad because the babies just accommodated the limited capacity of their caregivers because they knew they had no choice
right.
but to survive. And if you're a high maintenance baby and your parent is incapable of meeting any level of that need, the best thing you can do is shut it down. And it's
Exactly.
sad.
It is very sad. And
Yeah.
for the ambivalent, it's wired into survival because the signal cry, they get the feeling that if they keep sending the signal cry, they keep crying, they keep demanding, basically, that they'll have a better chance of getting their needs met. And
As adults, they're very good advocates for themselves and others. They know how to open up their mouths.
yes, and the thing that they sometimes have a challenge with is avoidance take things to the positive, ambivalence take things to the negative. They tend to ask for their needs through a complaint. And if they can learn to make requests in a more positive way, they'll get their needs met a lot more. So that's a skill that an ambivalent can take on. Because an ambivalent might say something, a person that's struggling with that style might say something, you're never here for dinner on time. And I spent all this time making your favorite meal and you didn't even show up. And now it's cold, now it's ruined, and I'm just going to throw it in the trash. You know,
Mhm.
that's probably true and it's unfortunate, but it's not the best way to get the better result. So you could change what you're saying to something, and this you have to learn how to do this. It's like, I really love having this time together at mealtime, and it's just I really enjoy cooking for you and something you really love to have, and it's just so nice when you actually are here to enjoy it with me, you know. So you have to kind of find ways to move through the negative bias, because it tends
Right.
off-putting, so you're kind of pushing away the person you most want to be close.
So
And
instead of telling them what you don't want, try describing what you want.
yeah, in a kind-hearted way, right? That will be a lot more helpful. And then the other thing is, because the ambivalent gets so much stress on separation, that they tend to be very insecure if there's any separation of any kind. So it's important that they learn how to give another person space. Like, I'll be okay. I know you're occupied with your project till 4 o'clock this afternoon, and I'm going to try not to interrupt you, but everything in them wants to interrupt them, you know? So they have to kind of learn that it's okay to give a certain amount of space. But the nice thing about the ambivalent is they're very clear they want relationship. The avoidant, they send a lot of mixed messages about that. The other thing is receiving. The ambivalent has a hard time um, learning how to take the positive in because they tend to nix it. You know, they tend to devalue it. It's like,
Hmm.
I asked this one person I did a session with a long time ago. She came in the session, I'm going to break up with my boyfriend. He's never available. He travels to work, and we never have any time together. It's just totally sucks, you know. I'm like, okay, and I interview her a little bit. I find out that she's probably ambivalent, you know, just from her history and everything. And I said, well, what, you know, you've been with this guy for 2 years. Is there anything he's done that's nice that you really like? She goes, no, he's never this, he's never that. I'm like, well, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire a little bit. Is there anything he ever does that's a caring behavior? And she goes, well, when he's on these business trips, he calls me every night to see how I'm doing. I said, well, that's kind of nice. She goes, yeah. I said, well, what about anything else? And she goes, she's getting kind of mad at me now. You know, she's like, ugh. Oh, well, he goes to all these different countries. This was in Europe. Goes to all these different countries and he brings me back these really nice gifts that I actually really like. So I kind of have the idea that he kind of knows who I am. And I went, well, that's just sweet, you know? And she's like, yeah. Now she's like confused. Like, wait a minute. I thought this guy was a jerk and he's maybe not, you know? So I said, well, what else does he do? And she goes, well, because we don't see each other that much, when he's home, he always takes me for like a 3 or 4 day weekend to someplace really special, and we have this really condensed time together. I said, well, that's really nice. And she's like, she's now surprised herself. She's like, oh, I guess he is
Or
doing.
now you're the one she's annoyed with.
Yeah, she's annoyed with me because I'm making her find these caring behaviors. But the thing is that ambivalent people, a lot of times, because they have this negative filter, they don't
Yes.
see what their partners are doing that's good. And so as a therapist or just a person, you need to like be looking at like, well, wait a minute, I need to appreciate what this person is actually doing. They tend to devalue. And then that's really hard on their partner because their partner feels like they're completely unappreciated. You know, everything
Yeah.
isn't that they don't do it right, they don't do it enough, they don't, so they can never do anything right. And you don't want to be sending that message to your partner because it's just hard, then to go a direction that's good. So one of the things that we help when we're in our ambivalent spaces, and I have to work with myself with this too, it's like I have to go, well, wait a minute, this person really showed up for me this way and they showed up for me that way. And okay, yeah, they forgot to call last night, but you know what? They did all these other things that show they like, why am I just completely focused on the fact that they didn't call at 8:00? They said they were going to call at 8:00. So I have to when you find yourself building a case against somebody in your head, do anybody else do that, right? You're building a case against someone, just go, wait a minute, let me stop that activity for a minute. Let me see if there's anything else that I can look at here that is maybe more fair. And that can help a lot because the ambivalent has trouble receiving. And the reason they have trouble receiving the good stuff and really taking it in is because it'll turn their signal cry off. And unconsciously, if their signal cry, which is an adult's complaint,
it's literally like anxiety. It's like when you start to help somebody reduce their anxiety, they start to feel even more vulnerable because at some level they feel like the anxiety keeps them safe. And so if you turn off the signal cry to the ambivalent, they become worried that their needs in the future are not going to get met.
Exactly. They get really upset, so they have to learn that they can allow themselves to feel satisfied and fulfilled and nothing bad happens.
It's so hard.
And that's like uncoupling that link that's really in there between if I relax into this relationship, the next thing going to happen is I'm going to get hurt or disappointed or somebody's going to abandon me. And that's so locked in. So we have to tease that apart, but it has to happen through experience. I can't just tell someone to tease that apart. They have to actually feel the difference. So with this person, I said, I want you to imagine all the loving behavior, all the kind words, all the acts of service, anything that would be good for you in a relationship. I want you to just pile it up on the table in front of you. And then I said, now that you have it all figured out, all the different details of that, I want you to just see if you can take it in. And they go, oh my God, my stomach just got really tight. And I'm like, okay. So it's a little bit too
interesting.
Much. So why don't you try 1% of it? And they say, oh, 1%, I could do 1%. And actually my stomach relaxes. I start to feel satisfied. I'm like, then they go, I want more. I'm like, great. If you feel into how much more you can handle, okay, I'm going to go to 5%. Great. 5%. I can take 5% into my stomach's relaxed. I can feel satisfied. And I said, I would want you to notice that as you're feeling satisfied and fulfilled, nothing bad is happening. I'm like, yeah, nothing bad is happening. So you have to work it through experience, is my experience. They have to feel the difference. And then that starts to make a difference. And this person that was, so sure she was going to break up with her boyfriend at the end of the session, she said, oh, my boyfriend's going to be so glad I had this session because now I appreciate him so much. He's doing all these things for me. I hadn't realized he's amazing. And I'm like, yeah, he's going to be really glad you did this session.
And that is someone who doesn't mind being wrong. That is someone who is open to hearing that they're just not seeing the clearest picture of what's going on. I love that.
Yeah.
How about the hybrid, the foot on the gas, the foot on the brake?
Well, the disorganized often you can have disorganized avoidant where mostly when fear or threat enters the picture, you just withdraw. Or we're
talking about the disorganized attachment style.
Yeah. And disorganized ambivalent would be you get more clingy, more needy, more negative, more complaining. And then you can also flip between them. So gas pedal on, gas pedal off. You can be oscillating between the two extremes of the ambivalent and extremes of the avoidant.
Meaning that in the disorganized attachment style, we have a combination of the ambivalent and the avoidant. And in every person, there's a different level of what is higher.
Yeah.
Right?
But you can have what I call disorganized avoidant, where primarily you go to a very extreme version of avoidant. You can cut the person off, never want to talk to them again. I mean, that can be, but usually that's because it's mixed with the threat response, that there was enough danger in your upbringing, like abuse or an alcoholic parent that brought a lot of chaos or, whatever it was, it put your threat response in conflict with your attachment system. So your attachment system wants to go close to the parent and your threat response is like, oh no, get out of there. It's dangerous.
Because your experience was that the parent was somebody dangerous. Not only who you didn't get comfort from, but who could be dangerous at times.
Yeah, dangerous or highly chaotic or angry all the time. And you can't bond in that kind of energy. So, and some people have situational disorganized where maybe their parents were basically okay, but then like, I don't know, when somebody drank too much, they yelled really loud. So loud noises trigger them into fragmentation or dissociation. It depends, sometimes it's just situational. So like one or two things will trigger you into a disorganized reaction that you don't live with it all the time. But somebody who was raised in an abusive household, unfortunately, they often will have the hallmarks of disorganized.
And what do we do for someone like that? What is the goal to help someone
Well,
like that?
it would be more crossing over into trauma work, definitely. And so the need for safety and how to help people have defensive oriented responses related to whatever was threatening. I usually have people, distance threat, because very often when we feel threat, we feel like it's right here, which makes it more intense. To say, if you could put that disturbing behavior of the other person, and I don't demonize the whole parent. I say, okay, there's part of this parent that you love. Let's keep that. That's a good thing. But maybe there was some particular things your parent did that were really scary. And that behavior, whatever that disturbing behavior is, I want you to put as far away from you as you need it to be. And some people want that in the corner of the room so they can keep their eye on it. Some people, I've had people say they want it on the edge of the ever expanding universe, right? So then I have them work with bringing in sometimes a competent protector, somebody that helps them feel safe. And then sometimes I have them, do or say, I have them immobilize the disturbing behavior, like can't move, can't speak, can't make any noise, can't do anything, instead of immobilizing themselves,
So you're doing this through visualization?
I do it through, it can be visualization, can be action, can be all sorts of different ways we do it. They might have an image of the disturbing behavior in an old-fashioned English telephone booth where the person can't escape it, or a big block of ice. I mean, some people are more visual. Or they can feel like they want to, punch the person in the face, or they want to run away. I mean, there's different defensive oriented responses that will come up. I just have them complete them in a safe way in the session, or in with a friend or something. And then once they complete the defensive orienting, if they feel too helpless to do it themselves, I bring in an ally, like someone that they feel safe with, someone they feel is competently protective, and that person can even say to an angry parent, like, hey, we're taking you to anger management. It can be a compassionate response with, hey, you know what? You need some help. We're taking you to anger management classes. And they see their competent protector, their ally, taking their parent off to anger management. Or they can see the person say, you're never going to treat this kid like this again. You're going to stop this behavior right now. They get to experience somebody on their side that's protective when that wasn't available. A lot of the reasons people don't integrate trauma is because there wasn't any empathetic other available to help them process the extreme situation.
What do you mean by integrating trauma?
Well, by healing it, by, being able to move past the wound and back into an empowerment or back into a healthy experience after something difficult has happened. And certainly the relational traumas that we encounter are much more attachment oriented. I mean, sometimes you have a car accident, doesn't really have anything to do with your relationship, with your history, your parents or something. But the fact that you accept or don't get or do get good support around the car accident, that has to do with your attachment system. So almost any traumatic experience has an element of relationship to it.
Yeah. If you come from a parent who is disorganized, the parent has a disorganized attachment style. Is there a way of being in relationship with that parent without also being disorganized yourself?
Oh, absolutely. I had that. I grew up with that. So I learned that.
I mean, same. That's why I'm asking for a friend. I mean, sorry.
No,
Carry on with your example.
No, it's definitely possible. I think if you really want to take this on in a serious way, it's like learning how to present secure attachment in almost any situation. Like even if someone's being attacking, I have this happen. I always respond with really dignified, respectful responses. And even though the other person's not doing that, they might be really egregious. I stick to my respectful, dignified responses. And it may not resolve anything, it might not, but my goal for myself is that I stay in my secure attachment. I don't always do it. I mean, nobody always does everything right, but I try to do that. And with my very disorganized parent, I learned to respond to when they were in a healthy space, to really be enthusiastic. And when they weren't in a healthy space, I didn't give them much energy. I was there, but I didn't, engage so much. And gradually they kind of learned that to engage with me, they kind of needed to be in a certain way. That helped a little bit. But I also really tried to um, see, I was given this assignment from one of my spiritual teachers, if I could be with that parent and see past their obscurations, see into them in a way that was beyond their personality or their woundedness, and to try to see what was behind all that, the purity of the
Hmm.
soul that was behind all that. And I have to say, that was a really powerful practice. And it had a profound effect on me because I was sort of able to do it. And also, my parent just shifted into this different experience, and actually before they passed away, said to me, how loving I was and how they could felt so loved by me. And it was really because of that practice. So I do
Wow.
think we can do a lot. I mean, there's a lot more examples I could give you, but that's the one that comes to mind right now.
When you are dealing with someone who you know has a traumatic history and it's showing up in their attachment style in their relationship, which do you deal with first?
That really varies. I try to sense when I'm with that person, if I'm, because I'm a therapist, so if they're in my office, they're kind of agreeing that they want to work on something, maybe.
Yeah.
And then I might ask them what their goals are, what they would like to see happen, what they would like most to see shift in the time we had together that day or over a period of time. And that will guide me. Or sometimes I just I try a few things and I try to, poke around a little bit to see where there's the door is open, where there's accessibility. And, so often they're tied together. How the person's reacting to the trauma is also, connects to what happened to them early on, but not always. And I guess the thing is, if you start to resolve, like, let me say somebody's coming to you from a medical trauma or a car accident or something that's, a little bit more mechanical in a sense, then sometimes resolving some of the really scary triggers around that then allows the nervous system and the brain and the person to relax enough that they can like explore more easily. They're not so at the effect of fear and terror that they can start to explore some of these more tender, vulnerable places that are earlier on, that maybe, I mean, I don't know why I'm thinking of this, but this guy, there's a company in Denver maybe it's still here. This is 20 years ago, but they had a research team that would go to Antarctica, and these scientists, and really super smart scientists, would go down and research all this stuff in Antarctica, and they would have seasonal affective disorder. They get depressed because they're dark half the year and freezing. It's super cold, and the worst ocean between Chile and Antarctica, it's like the worst, choppiest, most tumultuous ocean on the planet. So people get really seasick. And this one guy came back and he had been horribly seasick the whole time, when he was on the boat going back and forth. And I put him on a physio ball and I put it up against the couch that wasn't rolling around, but I just said, so I just want you to notice if you go a little bit this way, even like an eighth of an inch, if it triggers anything, if you go, we went around different directions. And we turned out that his seasickness was only happening if he went a particular direction. So I can't remember, but I would say it was left. If he went a little bit left, he got this really huge seasick reaction. And so then I just said to him, so as you go a little bit left, then come back right, you come back right onto the physio ball and center your response. I said, what do you have anything else that comes up that happened on the left that you remember? And immediately he remembered being abandoned at the hospital by his father. He wanted time with his father all the time, and his father never had time for him. And then his father got him a teddy bear and said, oh, we're going to have a special day. And then he basically drops him off the hospital for a tonsillectomy. I mean, really, really not a good thing. So this kid is alone, doesn't have his mom or his dad there. He's a nice nurse. So we worked through that abandonment. And then the next thing, the reason that the left was a problem was his dad promised to teach him how to ride a bike. And so, how parents, are behind the bike. And he goes, the little kid in this, my client says, don't let go, don't let go. And so his dad says, I won't let go, I won't let go. And so he's riding. And eventually, his dad can't keep up because he's riding. And he looks back and his dad's not there, which triggers this earlier abandonment at the hospital. And then he falls on a picket fence on his left side. So as soon as we resolve the picket fence injury from when he was, I don't know, 8 or 9, 5 or 6, whatever he was, he never had the seasickness again. So it was like finding out where is the arousal bound in someone.
Huh, somatically.
Yeah, where is it bound? And then what is it that will free that up and help someone heal? And then, of course, I didn't do attachment work back then. This was pre my attachment focus. I mean, there was a screaming attachment issues there from his dad constantly letting him down like
Of
that.
course.
I find it endlessly fascinating as our trauma history and our relational history um, present itself, and also how do we untie those knots where we're able to,
Right.
become less encumbered by it or not encumbered by it at all as it resolves. And a lot of it, I think 50% is awareness, some of it's understanding in the awareness, and then actually working with the arousal in the body and in the emotions and in the self in a way that helps a person come to a resolved place. That's the goal.
And the person being willing to work in the moment of trigger, either expanding their window of tolerance or like
Yes.
coping with the discomfort that comes up. If it's something negative that they don't want to be tolerating, that we don't want to encourage them tolerating, like what are better or more adaptive ways of managing those situations. It's no wonder that attachment problems are intergenerational, because the way whatever we don't heal in ourselves, we're then going to play out with our own children and in our own relationships. Are you EMDR trained? Like, what is your trauma history?
I have the basic training in EMDR, but it's not the method that I use much. Yeah.
And did you ever use EMDR?
I primarily use somatic experiencing because I feel like it does what it needed to do. So
Yeah.
I can work together. So those are my primary ones, and I use the inner parts work. I mean, I do that. It's not exactly IFS, but I do my version. And I don't do much with the bilateral stimulation. I find it fascinating, but it isn't my main toolbox in my main.
Yeah.
It can be really powerful work. And I've done some work with brain spotting with David Grand and.
And do you find that to be effective? The
Yeah,
brain spotting?
I have found that to be effective, and I've seen EMDR sessions which are very effective. So I think it's great we have all these different possibilities because not everything fits for everybody. So you got to find the right entry point for each person. Most therapies I find valuable. There are some aspect of them at least that I find valuable. There are a few that I don't find valuable, but I think people should be deeply trained in at least 3 modalities.
I
So they don't look at
completely agree.
not look at anything through one window. I think that's not
Or
useful.
worse, through a shade drawn because there's been no training other than their master's degree or whatever their educational training is that basically teaches us how not to hurt people. I don't really think it makes us competent therapists at all.
I would have to agree wholeheartedly. When I look back at my master's degree, even my PhD, I just think if I had relied on that, so much of what I came was from hanging out with other experts that have been in the trenches forever and had so much wisdom to impart. I definitely had some learning in my master's and my PhD, but just in terms of how to be effective as a therapist, I've taken endless trainings. I'm one of these people that loves to loves to learn. So,
what new research in attachment theory are you most excited about?
I read this recent article, "The Verdict is In." It was by Dan Siegel and Dr. Strofe, I think. It was about how attachment patterns get played out in schools, and like if you have a strong avoidant way of presence and saying yourself, or strong ambivalent, or strong disorganized, whatever, it will create like a countertransference with teachers, and I'm sure that happens with therapists too. I'm just used to working with it in the therapy world a little bit more, but I really thought that was insightful, that this is such important information for schools, because if a kid's avoidant, teachers tend to leave them alone.
Yeah.
And if they're ambivalent, they tend to overfunction for them because the ambivalent presents as needy, so that they don't learn autonomy because everybody's always doing it for them. And that the disorganized get that reinforced by they're the problem kid, and that it just reverberates their attachment injury again, over and over again. So the more recent piece that I've been enjoying looking at is how this plays out in schools. So that article, I think you can find it online, and it's not like you have to pay for it. I think it's free online. It's called "The Verdict is In."
I will link to it in the show notes. And is the premise that we need to be training teachers to be aware of this so that they don't play into it?
Well, ideally, and just the premise in the article, I don't know that it's just pointing out what happens, but I don't know. you could surmise from that ideally in an ideal world, there would be more attachment understanding. It's like one of my friend's daughter went to a school when she was in middle school, I think it was, and there was the school provided nonviolent communication training for the
Yeah.
kids and for the teachers and for the parents and for the administrators, for everybody. So I went to some of those meetings and it was really fascinating. The parents were having a harder time with it than the kids. But I would listen to her. She's like 11 or something, and she's in the back seat with her little friends. And I'm listening to her. She's like unbelievable ambassador of health and communication. I mean, she was like the kids themselves would take care of if somebody was bullying, the kids would take care of it. If somebody was having a hard time, the kids would take care of it through this nonviolent communication. So I'm just saying that as an example, because I think it wouldn't cost that much to have like even this 90-minute conversation or like throw a few books in somebody's direction. To have this be available as a course or teaching for school teachers, especially with, 0 to 12. But I really think, I mean, it's been so powerful in my life, in my relationships, and I think relationships are a really important part of life, that I just feel like it's not that hard to learn. When you understand it, it makes sense. I mean, I hope from this conversation, people go, oh, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Or I see myself that when I'm stressed, I tend to isolate, or I see myself when I'm stressed, I tend to get really needy, or I see, and that's okay. It's just like, how do I manage that? Or how do I work with that in a way that's healing? That's the idea.
It is. So what do you do to maintain your own emotional health?
I'm a very big sponsor of gatherings. I bring people together like all the time, whether it's online or in my personal life. I mean, I have people over. I do really nice celebrations for people's birthdays or holidays or whatever. And I'm kind of, everybody says I'm the party place, but it's not like, I mean, almost none of my friends drink. It's not that kind of party, but it's just like getting people together that really rich conversations. And then I have all these kind of conversational cues, like ways to get into deeper conversation than small talk. So, people really get to know each other. So I guess that's very good for my emotional health. It's a lot of work, but it's also good for my emotional health. And then I'm a big into art. I do mosaics. Make really beautiful mosaic shrines, and that's my contemplative practice. So. And then I just think also having meaning in your life, like making a contribution when you can, whatever your gift is, to find a way to communicate it. I think that's really important for people to find individually and, to find a way to communicate that. And now when we have all this internet stuff, it's a little easier to communicate things. But to put healing energy out into the world, because I think, we all need it personally, and certainly the world can use giant doses of it. So.
Well, you have squeezed such a giant amount of healing energy on the world throughout your career, through your books, and certainly in the time that you've so generously given to me. I can't thank you enough for that. Diane Poole Heller, thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome. And thank you for everybody that's listening. It's so nice to have this time with you.
Where can people learn more about you?
Oh, yeah. Website's probably the easiest place. And we have it. There's 2 different ways to get to the website that go to the same place. It's called traumasolutions.com, or just my name, DianePooleHeller.com. And we have lots of courses we offer online. We're starting another attachment course in August, the end of August. So you're welcome to jump into some of those things if they feel like they fit for you. And we also, this is a little bit different about our particular organization, is we promote a lot of other people's work. So we have Terry Levy working on healing parents right now, coming up very soon. Then it's a double meaning. It's like healing parents, but also parents
Yes.
healing, So we try to really cherry pick and kind of put a spotlight on people that are also making a big contribution. So we try to offer their work as well. So if you want to get on our mailing list, we do send emails out, so you'll get some, but you can always just erase them if it's too many. And we try to put out really, really high quality content. So
that sounds great, Diane. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for your time today.
Yeah, Darcy, it's been a delight.
We Need to Talk with Dr. Darcy Sterling is a Sterling Standard production. This episode was produced by me, Darcy Sterling. Editing and sound engineering by Bart Migal. Our theme music is by Trending Music. Special thanks to Amanda Christiani, Preston Smith, and Stephanie Sterling. If you know someone who would benefit from hearing about this topic, please share this episode with them and be sure to rate us. We'll be back on Tuesday with the dating, relationship, and mental health hacks you've come to expect. As always, references are linked in the show notes below.